In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front steering knuckle on your Kia Optima. Located behind the front wheels, let's get started. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead and remove the lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Moving to the back of the hub, we're going to be removing the caliper and caliper bracket assembly. Using a 17mm socket, go ahead and take out this bolt. And now we're going to take the one on the top. Remove the bolt. Now that we have the bolts off the bracket, we can grab onto the assembly and slide it off. I'm going to be using a hook so we can clamp it on to the strut. When you do this, you want to make sure that you're not putting any pressure on the line. It will cause damage. Just move it out of the way. So we can get the rest of the job done. Now we can remove the rotor. Using a 32mm socket, we're gonna go ahead and remove the axle nut. One thing I like to point out, you wanna make sure that the axle moves freely from the hub. If it doesn't, you might need to use some heat. Using a 10mm socket, we're gonna go ahead and remove this bolt. Once you take it out, you're gonna go ahead and wiggle the sensor side to side to remove it from the knuckle. Move the sensor out of the way. Next up, we're gonna be removing the tie rod from the knuckle. We're gonna start by removing the pin, bend the legs back, and slide it out. You can use a set of needle nose pliers to help you slide it out. Next up, using a 17mm socket, we're gonna go ahead and remove that nut. Take the nut out. Using a hammer, we're gonna go ahead and tap on this area. Be careful not to hit the stud. Grab onto the arm and just move it out of the way. Now we can go ahead and remove the pinch bolt for the lower of the knuckle. Using an 18mm wrench, I'm gonna go ahead and hold the bolt on one side. And on the other side, I'm gonna use an 18mm socket to remove the nut. Remove the nut. And now you can go ahead and remove the bolt. For now, we're gonna leave the bottom ball joint in because now we need to remove the hub from the whole assembly. To remove the hub, we're gonna be using a slide hammer. As you can see, part of the bearing came off with the hub. That's why it's always recommended to do these as a set, because they do get damaged when you remove these. Sometimes they don't, but in this case it did, so we're gonna be replacing it. Now we can go ahead and remove the backing plate. There is gonna be 3 10mm bolts. Using a 10mm socket, go ahead and remove those. And here's the last one. With the 3 10mm bolts out, you should be able to grab onto the shield and slide it out. Sometimes you have to wiggle it side to side. And here's the shield. With the hub and the shield out of the way, we can go ahead and remove these 2 bolts that hold the strut onto the knuckle. Using a 24mm wrench, we're gonna hold on to the other side of the bolt. And with a 19mm socket, go ahead and remove the bolt. Remove the nut. And now slide the bolt out. We're gonna be repeating the same process on the other one. With the pinch bolt off and these 2 bolts off, we can grab onto the knuckle. At the same time that we take the axle away from the knuckle, we can go ahead and slide it out. And this should slide off, just like that. Next up, we need to prep the hub to be able to go into the new bearing. And like I showed previously, this part of the bearing came off with it. That's why it's recommended to do it all at the same time. In this case, I'm gonna be using a small pry bar and a hammer to get rid of this race. Next up, moving the whole knuckle with the wheel bearing in, we're gonna go ahead and use a flathead screwdriver to remove this C-clip that goes in the back of it. Being very careful, what we can do is we can pry onto it, and being very careful, we can cover it with our hand. You wanna make sure that this doesn't hit your face. So you can go ahead and move it to the side, just like that. And we're gonna be doing the same on this side of the clip. Like I mentioned before, be very careful with this. Once you remove it, we can go ahead and move on to a bench press to press the bearing out. Here at the press, we're gonna go ahead and push our bearing out. Now that we removed that C-clip, go ahead and set it up. Just keep in mind that the bearing goes inwards. When you do this, you want to make sure you have safety glasses on. It looks like we're maxed out. We're gonna go ahead and reposition the shims so we're able to move it down all the way. So we went ahead and repositioned it. We're using a different shim now. Let's take a look. And it looks like our bearing came out. And here we have the knuckle. And here we have the new knuckle. We're gonna go ahead and put the new bearing in. To install the bearing, we're gonna go the opposite way. You wanna make sure that it is nice and straight. We're gonna go ahead and press it in. Like I mentioned before, make sure that it is nice and straight. When you start making contact with the part, you just want to keep an eye, make sure that it's going in evenly. If you see that it's going a little bit sideways, stop and reposition. Now that we have it started, we're gonna go ahead and lift up on it. We're gonna take a look. And we can see that it is not all the way in yet. What I'm going to do, because we need it all the way to the inside of this, I'm gonna be using the old bearing to push it all the way in. And you just gotta keep in mind, you do not want to put any pressure onto this black ring or to the center ring. All the pressure you want to be applying to this has to be on the outer ring. And that's the reason why I'm gonna use the old bearing, because that's gonna be right at the edge of it. Now let's go ahead and take a look. Remove the old bearing that we used to install the new one. And this is looking really good. This is what we want. We want the bearing to be seated right against that edge on the inside of this. Now we can go ahead and install the C-clip that holds the bearing in place. And here we have the knuckle. We're gonna be installing the C-clip. We're gonna pay attention to the groove that's on the inside where this is gonna be seated. You wanna make sure that there's no debris. If you have anything in there, go ahead and clean it. In our case, we're gonna go ahead and slide it in. Make sure you lined it up on one side. You can use a small flathead screwdriver to slide it in on one side and then push it in all the way around. You want to make sure that it's evenly seated all around. It should look something like this. Now we can go ahead and install the shield. And here we have the new dust shield. We want to make sure we install this before we put the new hub in. Go ahead and line it up with the hole. And install the 3 bolts by hand. Now we can go ahead and get them snug. And just to point out, our bolts were in bad shape, so we ended up replacing them. In this case, I'm just using a 10mm socket and an extension just to drive them all the way in. And now I'm gonna use a ratchet to get them all the way down. Now we're ready to install the hub. In this case, I'm gonna be using the spacer just to make sure when I push down on the whole knuckle, it's not gonna put pressure on the studs. You want it to be floating just like that. That way it does not damage them. Go ahead and bring the knuckle. Put it on this way because we're gonna be pressing it down. I'm gonna go ahead and put this shim in the back. And now I'm gonna put pressure on it to drive the hub into the knuckle. When you do this, you want to make sure that the hub is going in straight. If it is going sideways, you want to stop and rearrange. Once you have it all the way, let's take a look. and this is looking really good. This is what we want. You want to make sure that the hub moves freely. If it is hitting something, you might have gone all the way. If it's hitting anything in the back, you might have gone too far. This is what you want. Now we can go ahead and reinstall this back to the vehicle. Before we go ahead and install the knuckle assembly, we want to make sure that the spindle on the axle is clean and free of debris. And we're going to be spraying some Never Seez onto the splines. I'm going to go ahead and do that around the whole spline. Now we're ready to put the new knuckle in. There's two things we're going to do. We're going to start by lining up the bottom of the knuckle with the ball joint. And then we're going to be feeding the axle through the hub at the same time. We're going to go ahead and look something like this. Lined up the ball joint with the knuckle, push it in place, and now slide the axle into position. Should look something like that. Now we can go ahead and install the two bolts that holds the assembly to the strut. Lined up the holes and start the nut by hand. We're gonna be doing the same on the top bolt. Go ahead and get them snug. Do not tie them all the way yet. Now we can go ahead and install the pinch bolt. Go ahead and feed it from the other side. Install the nut. And for now, we're gonna just get it snug. Do not tie it all the way yet. Now we're ready to install the tie rod to the knuckle. Lined up the hole, push it in, and now we can install the nut. We're gonna go ahead and get it snug. Do not tie it all the way yet. We can go ahead and reinstall the ABS sensor to the knuckle. Lining up the hole, slide it in. Install the 10mm bolt. And now it is important that we torque it to 8 foot-pounds. We can go ahead and install the axle nut. We're just gonna get it snug. Do not tie it all the way yet. Now we're ready to install the rotor, but before we do so, I like to spray some Never Seez on the surface. Line up the holes and put it on. Just to hold the rotor in place, I'm gonna go ahead and use a lock nut. I'm gonna push it in and just by hand install the lock nut. And what this is gonna do is just hold the rotor in place. It's gonna make everything easier to install the brakes. Now we can go ahead and grab our brake assembly, detach it from the strut. Being very careful with the line. You don't want to bend it a certain way because it will cause damage. Go ahead and line up the rotor with the pads. And now we're ready to install the bolts. Go ahead and line up the bracket and install the bolts. Do the same on the top bolt. Now we can go ahead and get them snug. Do the same on the top bolt. Now we can get those bolts torqued to 73 foot-pounds. Do the same on the top one. Next up, we can get everything else torqued down. But before we do so, we need to apply some pressure onto the assembly to imitate the vehicle being on the ground. In this case, I'm gonna be using a screw jack, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. All we need to do is just apply some pressure. Like I said, this is just to imitate the vehicle being on the ground. Now that we have that in place, we can go ahead and torque everything down. The torque spec for the tie rod is gonna be 33 foot-pounds. In this case, I'm just gonna go ahead and get it snug. Now that it's snug, we can go ahead and install the cotter pin. Go ahead and bend the legs. Now we can go ahead and torque down the pinch bolt to 87 foot-pounds. In this case, this pinch bolt does not have a cotter pin. The actual nut itself acts as the lock. Now we can go ahead and torque down the two bolts that holds the strut to the knuckle. On one side, we're gonna use a 24mm wrench, and this is just to hold the nut down. And on the other side, we're gonna go ahead and get it torqued with a 19mm socket. We're gonna go to 130 foot-pounds. We're gonna be doing the same on the bottom bolt. Now we can go ahead and torque down the axle nut. Before we do so, a little tech tip. If you grab yourself a flathead screwdriver, you're gonna wedge it in between the rotor and the brake caliper. This is gonna hold on the whole assembly, and now we can torque this down to 214 foot-pounds. Now that we have it torqued down, we can remove our screwdriver. Now we can go ahead and lock in the nut. We're gonna find the little groove that's on the axle. In this case, I'm gonna use a flathead screwdriver, and we're gonna notch it in. It should look something like that. Go ahead and remove the lug nut that we previously installed. This was just there to hold everything in place. Now that everything is torqued down, we can remove our screw jack. Go ahead and install the wheel back on. Make sure you take the vehicle for a test drive, and also make sure you bring the vehicle to an alignment shop since we replaced the knuckle. Install the wheel. Start the lug nuts by hand. And get them snug. With the vehicle on the ground, we're gonna go ahead and torque it to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.